welcome to the JKA Massey Instructors course. We're going to continue today with the Niju job. So we took up before parts 1 and 2, and now I'm going to continue by putting up the next one, which is number 11. This one's a little bit long in terms of reading, so I'll take it slowly. So it's karate wa yu no gotoku, taezu netsu o ataizereba moto no mizu ni kaeru. Actually got a few more bits here too, just to add to that so you can see the whole translation here. So first of all, karate wa yu no gotoku. So yu is hot water, and gotoku means like, or like hot water. So you could say that karate is like hot water. Taezu netsu o ataizareba. So basically this means, taezu means always or continuously, and netsu means heat. So ataizu means to provide. So in other words, what we're saying is with karate, karate is like hot water, and you have to provide hot water with constant heat if you want the water to remain hot. And then mizu ni kaeru basically means that if you don't provide the water with heat, then of course the water will cool and go back down to cool water. So the definition of this one is karate is like hot water. If it's not constantly heated, it returns back to cool water. Now, in regard to how we could look at that in terms of basic karate, probably we could say the ideal situation would be train every day. If we look at that physically, that may not be possible because circumstances, work, other commitments will not make it possible for you to train every day. If you can, that's great, obviously. But even if we can't train every day physically, what can we do to keep our karate water hot? So we could say then that we can always put our attention on some aspect of karate. If you put your attention on it, then even if you're not necessarily training physically, but you're thinking about it, you're creating the subject of karate in your own mind. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this series of lectures on the Niju job, Genwa Nakasone also put in his book the idea of somebody pushing a rock or a cart up a hill. As long as you're pushing, okay, you will be hot because you're expressing sweat and energy to get the cart up the hill. But as soon as you take the foot off the pulse and you decide to slack off for any reason, for sure the cart's going to roll back down the hill and maybe take you with it. So the idea of this is if you continuously train, either physically or mentally, then the water stays hot and you can keep your concentration on your forward progress in karate. So that's that one, that's number 11. So let's go on to the next one, number 12. Okay, now this one says, katsu kangai wa motsu na, maku no kangai wa hitsuyo. Katsu means winning, and kangai is the idea. So you should have, motsu means to have. So the first statement is, basically means winning. Katsu kangai, have the idea of winning. Now, na means not. So when you say this sentence, you can say like, do not think of just winning. This is obviously in regards to a karate competition. However, make no kangai wa hitsuyo means, makeru is lose, and make nu means not lose. So make nu equals wa hitsuyo means, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the idea of losing. either. So the exact literal translation would be, do not think of winning, think rather of not losing. So we can put that down as not losing. Now, what does not losing actually mean? Does that mean, oh, when I go into a competition I should be standing there thinking, I hope I don't lose? No, that would not necessarily be a good translation for this idea. The idea is that kimochi means the feeling, the energy, the effort that you have for this competition would be, I'm going in there, and yes, of course, this is a competition. Of course, I want to win. I want to try to win. Doesn't matter who the opponent is, where the opponent is. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to make it very, very, very hard for them if I lose. So I do everything to my maximum capacity to win this competition. However, I'm not going to be solely concentrated on the fact that if at some point I come up against a better competitor, I actually lose. We often say with our students in the dojo, would you like to go in and compete? And some of them, I'm not so sure, I don't know, I'm scared I might get hit or something. And we always say, look, the first thing you've got to do is put your foot on the mat. As soon as you put your foot on the mat, you're actually winning already because you're there. You're competing, you're confronting. You're doing what you can do to make yourself a better karateka. It's not all about winning and losing, but you have to be there. If you're not there, you cannot win and you cannot lose. So it obviously cuts down to that at the end. Now, there's quite a nice phrase here, and I'd just like to put this one in. So it's uino. Sorry, got a bit of a frog in my throat there. So uino nimo, and then the second one is ue ga. Let's put that one down. Sorry. So basically this one means, ue means top, this means even, so ue, even at the top, or even the top, right, and then this one also ue ga aru. So this one means that even the top has a top. In other words, what we could say is that no matter what competition or where you go, there's probably likely somewhere, no matter how good you are, there's likely to be somebody who's even better. So this shouldn't affect you in regard to competition. You should just always go in there with an even disposition and go for it as hard as you can. This is for the waza from the Japanese. Okay, now let's have a look at the next one. That's number 12. And this is number 13. So teki, there's one called teki ni yotte tenkaseyo. Teki basically translates as opponent, or actually probably the real definition is enemy, if we look at it from a historical point of view. And ni yotte means according to. So according to your opponent, and then tenka. Tenka means change, and seyo just literally means to do it. So the idea here is change according to the opponent, according to the enemy. Now, when you look at that point of view, if you're in a competition for kumite, and you're looking about how are you going to change according to your enemy, you've got to look at the technique of the other person. For example, we talk about Japanese. I trained a lot in Japan, and in Japan, obviously, Japanese people are a bit smaller than us. They've got a lower centre of gravity. Gaijin and Westerners often have longer legs, so we tend to favour leg techniques. Possibly our legs are also stronger and maybe even faster, I don't know. And Japanese people tend to have a lower centre of gravity, so they can come in more quickly. However, if they're fighting a Japanese person, maybe those two competing together are very equal. If you have a foreigner with long legs competing, he may be able to do a very fast, long stretch, say moshigiri. Now, if the Japanese person is going to fight his normal fight, perhaps in that situation he might lose quite easily, because the length and the straight expansion of the legs might be difficult for him to block or to get out of the way of. However, if he can step inside, so he can change according to his opponent, and he steps inside, makes that balance or the space, the mai, different, then when the person steps in, maybe the kick goes behind him, and then he can come in with a short punch or something like that and be the winner. So this is a very simple example of how you can change according to your opponent. You must try to make your techniques as best as possible to fit what the other person is doing, but also use your own strengths as well. Okay, so that would be that one. Now we'll go on to the next one. And this is number 14. Now, this one is Ikusa wa kyojutsu no soju e kan ni ari. So let's explain that first. Ikusa means a battle. And kyojutsu, we can translate that in English as like fact or fiction. If we look at kyo, actually kyo in this definition means false or a falsehood, and jitsu means truth or real. And we could also say for false illusion. Now, this one's a little bit more obscure to understand, I think, but if you look at it, a battle can be won by the maneuver. This is soju. So we have to get soju here as well. Now, maneuver, the idea of this would be like control. So control, how or in what way, in what way does a person control a fight or a battle, right? So ikusa wa kyojutsu no soji kan ni ari. A battle can be won by the maneuver, fake or true, false or not false. Very easily we can define this in simple terms by saying, like Kensei is like making a feint. So in competition you might go for a chudan punch, but this is only a fake, and then you come over the top with a kazamasuke, and this is the winning move, let's say. When I was in Japan, we used to enjoy Kagami Baraki once every year at the start of the year. This was an opportunity for all the students to be able to go into the dojo on the first day of training for the new year and compete against the senseis. It was our only chance to have a full-on go at them. Always quite fun, and we always look forward to it. Sometimes we even trained to see if we could pick up some special technique where we could get them. And on one particular occasion, I'd been training all year, and I was feeling quite good and quite sprightly, and I thought maybe I could just go in and perhaps, with a bit of good luck, maybe I could get one of the senseis and score a point on him. So I went in, I had a whole thing that I had sort of figured out might be a good technique for me, and I applied this technique thinking, yes, I know what's going to happen here, the sensei's going to move there, I'm going to do my little feint, and then he's going to be right where I want to, and I'll be able to hit him with my moshigiri. So I did my technique, and it didn't work, because by the time I actually went to hit him, he wasn't there. So this kyojutsu, like the idea of a illusion, he gave me the illusion. He stepped back and it looked like he was going to go exactly where I thought he was going to go, and then he was gone, and then he just came around and went pop, and just hit me straight in the chest. And I was like, okay, maybe next year. But this is the idea of how this perhaps can be interpreted on a straightforward physical way. There is another way of looking at this, and I'd like to take that up on another occasion. It's not necessarily relative to the Nijujo, but it will come as part of the kumite techniques that we will define in a later section of this course. So for now, that's all I'm going to mention about this particular one. That's number 14. Now number 15, this is the last one we're going to do in this particular section, and it says hito no teashi o kento omoi. So teashi, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the term teashi, especially if you're a black belt. So we often say teashi, make sure you use both arms and your feet. Hito no teashi o kento omoi. So hito means person. Te, well, obviously you know this, but anyway, just to put it here, is hand, and ashi is foot. Hito is person. And ken is sword. So this translation would be, consider a person's arms and legs as swords. Now, if we look at that concept, we could say, well, obviously people are not walking around, as karateka usually do, considering their martial prowess and how they're going to work in the dojo. But we could look at everybody, including people in the dojo, and imagine that when we're training, that their arms are not just arms, their arms and their legs are as dangerous as swords. So if we were to be hit with a sword, we would get cut. Okay? So the idea would be that when we're training, we're looking at the idea of making sure that we are protecting ourselves as best as possible against a full-blown cutting blow from a sword. Same idea of when you defend yourself against arms and legs, which can be considered in the same way. So this is the idea of this particular concept for that one. Okay, so that's number 15. And that's actually all we're going to do for today on this. I'll take up another one in the following, and that'll be the last one for number 20. So for today, thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.